Hi, I'm Terry Kyle, the co-founder of WPX.net, arguably one of the fastest WordPress hosting companies in the world. And joining me today is David Jenyns from SYSTEMology.com, and I have read David's book, it's great. And David has a huge amount of experience in systematizing and processizing, not a real word, just made it up now, your digital business, or it could even be an offline business, in order to make it more efficient, to make it kind of manageable and sustainable for the people running it or the people founding it and everybody involved. So it's a great pleasure. And I think David and I, we sort of know similar people, but we've never directly connected before. But hopefully from today onwards, we'll do that a lot more. So it'll be great to hear David's thoughts on this business of systematizing stuff. And you can go to systemology.com. David has books on the topic. I think he's a public speaker on it as well. And you can just check out his courses and all of that. And I'm sure they'll be hugely beneficial for your business. So welcome today, David. Great to talk to you. And if we could just begin, if you could give a very brief autobiography of your life so far.
Thinking in terms of business, as soon as I left school, I've always been involved in various different businesses, from importing products from China to owning a rock and roll clothing music store. I'm probably most well known for the digital agency, which was just before Systemology. It was Melbourne SEO Services, and ran that for 10 years. Like, I was in the operations. And then for the final 3 years, I actually had a CEO in place who was running that. But I kind of had a little bit of a breakthrough moment at the end of my tenure at Melbourne SEO Services, where we found out we were pregnant. And I thought, I don't want to be that dad who's always too busy, just stuck in the business. And I systematically worked my way out of those day-to-day operations as I handed over the reins to a CEO. And it's that last piece of the business where it really caught my attention. And I thought, that's what I want to do. I want to show other business owners how to do that.
Cool. Are you a natural entrepreneur, David? Like, are you a left brain, more analytical maths kind of guy, or right brain creative thinker? Like, where do you sit in that?
I definitely feel I'm more creative. I kind of pushed myself for the analytical side. Like, when I left school, I was interested in the stock market because I thought I want to make as much money as I can. So I was learning everything I could and kind of really pushed myself into that. But a lot of the creative stuff comes naturally. And I feel, as a business owner, the businesses that I run are really expressions of my creativity and things that I make up in my mind and then bring them into reality.
Yeah, I think the thing that's not that well understood about us entrepreneurs, because I'm definitely like that, is that we understand the power of imagination, and we can actually take things from our imagination and turn them into things in the real world. So for instance, in my case, it's things like a science fiction movie that was on Channel 9 ages ago. I have a dog shelter now with 140 dogs here in Sofia, Bulgaria. And I'm applying my imagination to that, for example, to give the dogs a much better life and much better chance of adoption. And I think if you are that natural entrepreneurial person, it's not even so much about money, but it's just being a driver of change. It could be something in your community or just something in the world that you really believe in. And I think, unfortunately, education might dull that down quite a bit. And I think kids, particularly because I've been a teacher as well, need to have that imagination and that entrepreneurial drive kind of encouraged and nurtured.
It's funny, when I got started, it was really a moving away strategy. I looked to what my parents had, and they were always struggling and fighting over money. And I thought to myself, I don't want to be like that. And that's really what drove me first off to get down to it. But then you're right, as you kind of get into the swing of it and you find your feet and you get some wins, it's really changed, particularly with my most recent business, Systemology, where I feel I'm contributing back to the business community. I'm trying to provide the information that I wish I had when I was getting started out on how to grow and scale and remove myself from the operations. So it's definitely changed to very much a giving back. And I think even if I wasn't being rewarded the way that I am, I would still be contributing to this level because it's just something that I enjoy doing. I love helping business owners.
Yeah. And I think we also live in a golden age now where access to tools has never been easier. It's never been cheaper to set up a new business. And the ability to access information has never been more freely readily available. I don't know if it's fully appreciated, but I think now we live in an incredibly, invigorating and empowering kind of golden age.
Yeah, I think drop in some AI and some of the advancements we're seeing online right now, and it's exciting. Like there's just so many opportunities with all of this change that's going on right now. And for the visionary, creative business owner who can see the opportunities, if you position yourself correctly, you can really have tremendous impact.
Yep, great. So, David, you fired yourself, you hired a CEO, you moved to the beach, and you then tripled your bottom line. How on earth did you do that? How did you achieve that?
The first step was to really identify what are the core systems required for the business to make money. And then I thought about how do I remove myself from those activities, as in these are tasks that are essential, repeatable, and every client that comes through, this is what we do. And then I started to wonder, how could I make that work without me? And it was just a systematic process. Firstly, just applying the rule of 80/20, trying to think of what are the key systems that deliver the bulk of the result. And then just built on that. I think systems and processes, what a lot of the benefit comes as you start to get this compounding effect of layering systems and processes on top of each other. Like initially, you only see some small wins, but then they start getting magnified and multiplied. So it was just being consistent and persistent with capturing those systems and processes and always looking to delegate down, as in pass some of these tasks down to less skilled, newer team members, which then enable the higher skilled, oftentimes most expensive team members to work on the highest value tasks. And I kind of realized that's the game. And I was able to kind of do that, plugged in a CEO, and then I took some time out when we had some kids. And that completely changed my perception on what it means to be a business owner. And, thinking about Michael Gerber, and he talks about working on it rather than in it. And then I really started to realize, especially in the digital agency, for a long period, I was just the technician. I was the person doing the work and at the center of everything. And a business owner shouldn't need to get on the tools unless it's something that they enjoy and they want to jump in. But generally speaking, to grow and scale, you want to really remove the business owner from the system.
Yeah. The famous business author and speaker Brian Tracy has one of his famous catchphrases. I saw him talking once in San Francisco a long time ago, is that all things are learnable. And what he meant by that, he was very much directing it towards the individual. But what I like about your approach is it's all about teaching the organization. So
Yeah.
in a way, all things are learnable for the organization or the company as much as any individual within it. And when you take on board that concept, it kind of seems a bit obvious and it seems almost too simple. But when you actually fully take on board that concept and you embrace it, you can achieve incredible things.
I had the good fortune of doing some work with Michael Gerber. I talk a little bit about it in the book, but Michael dropped, who's the author of the E-Myth, dropped a bunch of gold nuggets in my lap. And I remember one thing that he said was every business is a school. So think of your systems and your processes as lessons and your new team members as the students. And you're looking to train them up and make them as productive in the shortest possible time. And that kind of really stuck with me and speaks exactly to what you're talking to.
Yeah. By the way, one of my favorite audiobooks is Michael Gerber's E-Myth because he narrates it himself, and it's beautifully written and spoken in just the way he delivers that book. It's a very good book in paperback or Kindle, but on audiobook with him doing it's fantastic.
It's quite hypnotic.
Yeah, he is. What inspired you, David, to start the journey with Systemology? Was there one specific inflection point or moment that you can recall where the light bulb went off and you went, "Oh my God, this needs to change," or "I need to go in this direction"?
Yeah, I think um, taking that year off with once the kids arrived, I realized I actually lost the passion for the digital agency work. And then I had this void for a little while there where I was like, well, what am I going to do? And I had a few people ask. It was started off with just some friends, and then it kind of expanded to some clients, and they asked about how I had stepped out of the day-to-day operations. And I started like a little coaching group where I took a group of business owners. It was over a 6 month period where we kind of met every week, and I took them through a process of removing themselves. And that was kind of like the first kernel of this idea of systemology. And I started to go, "Well, I really enjoy this. I feel like personally rewarded from seeing business owners break through this." And then I started to think about a lot of the work that really inspired me around systems. I think of the E-Myth, as we mentioned, Traction by Gino Wickman, Scaling Up, Vern Harnish. There's a lot of great books on the topic. Built to Sell, John Warrillow. And I felt like a lot of those books built the case for why, but they never really gave the how to. And I felt like that's what was missing. So it was almost like I had a calling where I was like, I think I can fill this void. And like systemology, I really see as the how to implementation guide for the E-Myth. So it was really just seeing a hole, or what I felt was a hole in the marketplace, and then thinking, yeah, this is something that I can really add some value to, and something that I'd enjoy.
Yeah, there's a desperate need for that. And if you look at the runaway success of like the Dummies books and Idiots books, and I think they've sold something like 250 million copies, they're still going like powerhouses. I think there's a
Yeah.
tremendous hunger for that how to expertise and knowledge, particularly from people who've really done it and lived it. That's really important. So, David, you've got a bunch of
Yeah.
courses, you've got the books and so on. How can people access those? What can they expect to get from them? You've talked about the how to, but maybe you can break it down a little bit more. How do they,
Yeah.
where are they at when they come into it, and where are they when they come out of those courses or books?
Yeah, the target clients that I serve is the business owner who has a little bit of traction. They're selling their products and services. They've got a small team around them. Maybe it's anywhere from 3 to 15 staff, and they are finding they are still involved in all aspects of the business. So that's generally when people find me. And they start off with the book. The book is useful and complete. It outlines the strategy in its entirety. And for many, that's enough for them to run with and get great results. Some other people, they need a little bit of extra support. And we have a couple of different ways they can do that. There is an online program, either a group program, or they can work one on one with our systemologists. So there are 3 levels where we guide them through this process of capturing their most critical systems, and we identify a systems champion, and we help train that systems champion up with the skills that they need to help build a systems driven culture. And that's probably the big piece. So really the book, and then it's just how fast do you want to move and how much support do you need, and then that kind of picks which of those 3 programs might suit them best.
Okay, great. Do you think these systems are in danger ever of limiting or stifling creativity? How do you keep creativity in the mix with systems?
Yeah, I the big breakthrough for me with that happened in a video business. So we had the Melbourne SEO Services, and then we had quite a lot of inquiry from clients to create video content. And I created, it was almost like a sister company, Melbourne Video Production, where we were creating video content for clients. But I'm not a video guy. I don't know how to shoot or edit or any of that sort of thing. And I had to sort of build that business without me in it. And that's a really creative business, as in making videos is like videos are art, they're visual art. So I remember going on a shoot with our videographer one time, and in the drive on the way there, because he wanted someone to help run the shoot for him and just sort of run around, do the errands. And I stuck my hand up and said, "Look, I'll come along." And in the entire car ride, we spent the whole time him saying, "Did I pack the second battery? Did we email the client to let them know not to wear checkered shirts because it looks average on screen? Ah, did I bring the teleprompter? Oh, I hope I brought that extension lead." And we spent the whole time having a discussion about things that just should have been taken care of. And then at the end of that shoot, I said to him, "Look, we've got to put a pre-shoot checklist together so that way you pack everything and you know you've got everything when you leave the studio." So we put that into place, and about 6 months later, I go on another shoot with the same videographer. And the conversation we had in the car ride was night and day difference. We were talking about, on the second ride, the script and how he wanted to evoke certain performances from the actors, what shots did he want to have, how he wanted to get the lighting just right. And it made me realize for creativity to work, you need to create space. And the space is when the creativity comes out. And there's certain things in business that just need to happen. You need to invoice a client. You need to ask them a series of questions before you onboard them. And you just want those handled by systems and processes. And that creates the space for your team to do their best creative work. And that's when I realized it's a bit counterintuitive, because some people think systems and processes can remove creativity, but I definitely find the opposite is true. There are certain elements where you don't necessarily systemize the creative aspect, you systemize everything around the creative aspect, which then gives you space to be creative. So that was a bit of a paradigm shift for me.
Yeah, I think it comes back to something you talked about earlier in this talk, which is you want to free up your high-level strategic people from too much of the boring grind of crap that just needs to get done. They need to kind of be
Yes.
mentally free to create and innovate.
Yeah, that's 100% it. And once you do that, like, it starts with the business owner and freeing them up, but you're right, it's all of the team. It's your very best team members, and your newest team members learn on the most basic things and they get wins. And when something is an exception or outside of the system, they escalate it and they ask the more senior team member how it's done, and then they learn for next time. And then over time, those people get more skilled up and then they delegate down. So it's this constant progression of your highest skilled team members leveling up more and more and more. And that's, you want to create that culture.
For a typical small business owner that you encounter who is not familiar with your stuff, what do they need to change in their approach? And I think, kind of for me, one of the laws of the universe is that the default setting of anything sucks pretty bad. So, for example, if you or I tried a brand new sport tomorrow, we'd probably suck pretty badly at it on the first go. But actually, if we went away and trained with a top level guy for 6 months, we'd probably be at a competent or a goodish kind of level. And it's sort of like whatever it is, whether it's learning guitar or, videography or whatever it is, just the default way we do things just generally seems to suck. So that's a bit of a leading question there. So for small business owners who aren't familiar with your stuff, David, what do they generally need to change? What's wrong in their approach when they come to you?
Sometimes the biggest wins in business for these business owners is just to make their business more repeatable. A lot of them, when they think systems and processes, they try and re-engineer these systems. They try and make them world class. And it gets in the way of just getting it done, because then they need to be the one that creates the system. They need to be the architect. Whereas if you just start off first, like, the re-engineering can happen later. If you just focus on capturing what is currently already working and bring everybody up to that standard, because oftentimes, find out who answers the phone and handles that incoming inquiry the best. Let's find out what it is that they're doing, and then let's get everybody just to follow that. Just that idea of capturing what's currently working and making it repeatable, as opposed to designing this thing perfect or thinking it has to be right just from the outset. And it speaks to exactly what you said. Whereas, some people, when I talk to them, I say, tell me an example of a systemized business. And oftentimes McDonald's will come up and I'll say, oh yes, McDonald's is a systemized business. And people have a picture in their head of the way that McDonald's has systemized, but they forget that McDonald's has been systemizing for the past 60 years. And you're looking at the product of all of that work when we need to go back and think, how did they get started? And they got started very simply, very rough around the edges, and then they innovated on top of that. So it's a lot of what they need to do is let go of what they think systems are and start off by simplifying as much as possible.
Yeah, there's a really good website. I think it's First Versions. I'm not sure if it's .com, and it shows you the very, very 1.0 version of incredibly famous things, Facebook, Twitter, and all of that, and they're horrible. They just suck really bad. But you can't get to an evolved point without your 1.0. I think iPhone came out 2007, and you can't get to iPhone 14 or whatever it is now without iPhone 1.0. And if you look at the 1.0 one now, it looks like garbage. It looks like a kid's toy that can't do anything. But you just can't get to that later point without that iteration. So I'm curious, what about, this is not our question list, David, what about people, business owners / students who they like the idea of change, and you often see this in these TV shows where the expert flies in to fix a restaurant or a hotel or whatever, Gordon Ramsay and this kind of thing, Hotel Inspector, these kind of shows. And the business is failing massively, but the owner absolutely refuses to change what they're doing. They think they're right. They're failing on a huge scale. They like the idea of change, but they're just not, when it really comes down to it, they're not willing to do the hard work and defer to an expert or someone successful and do that. Do you encounter that?
Yeah, I think the way that the Systemology book is written, I try and bust a lot of the misconceptions and myths to start with, just to start to change the paradigm. And I do find that by the time that people get to me, oftentimes they're quite frustrated and they're ready for change and they're looking for a better way. Where I see what you're talking about the most, though, is when someone on the team reads the book and then they go to the CEO or the business owner or someone else on the leadership team, we should do this. And then there's some resistance between the two where, they're kind of like at lockheads, where someone wants to do it and the other person is very much stuck in their ways. And the good thing about systems is once you have a chat with someone, you realize all problems in business are just problems with your systems and processes. Like you're one system or process away from solving a particular problem. So oftentimes talking through the problems and then helping to show or demonstrate how the systems can solve that and getting some quick wins sometimes is enough to get them over the line. But it's hard because, some people are closed off. Like you chat with business owners who go, yeah, I've tried to systemize in the past and it didn't work. My team didn't follow the process. Maybe systems aren't for us. And it's like they've just tried one thing and they've abandoned it. What they don't realize is all of the resistance to the change happens up front. So it will be hardest at the start. You have to get over the hump before you get all of the good stuff that comes from it. So it's really having that persistence to get over that initial resistance is key.
Something we've seen here quite a bit at WPX, and I've seen other organizations, is that when you make a really, really big change in your systems or process, some people who've been with the company a long time or the organization a long time, they just refuse to change. They absolutely won't do it, and they'll give you excuses. They'll say they're doing it, but they're not doing it and all of that, and you have all these horrible meetings, and ultimately they need to leave the company. And what I find ironic about that is that they're going to leave the company that they know well and presumably love to go to a new company and learn a whole bunch of new systems and processes anyway when they go over to that new organization. So why not do them in the one that you already know? But there's just something in human psychology for some people. They just can't process and deal with adapting to a major change in what they're used to.
Sometimes we see it because there are different people respond for different reasons. One of the reasons I see that happen is sometimes team members think there is job security in business owners or their supervisors not really knowing what they do. As in, they create this little black box where they're doing certain activities, no one really knows what they're doing, which then in their head, they go, well, they can't really fire me now because nobody's going to know how to do my thing. And sometimes it's a bit scary for them and threatening when they feel like, oh, you're going to come in and shine a light on the work that I'm doing and capture my systems and processes. And you're right, some people opt out at that point in time. And it's important to remember in business that like sometimes the team members that help you get to one size can also be the team members that hold you back from growing through to that next size. And sometimes it's the same with the business owner. Like the business owner you are, at some point you'll hit this ceiling and either you will have to change or you will hit this invisible ceiling. So a lot of business owners there, adapt to change, and that's part of, their journey. But also some business owners just get stuck. And just like team members, that change is critical to move through.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at the life cycle of any famous company that you admire, whoever it might be, the people who got them from, point B to point D are very different from the people who got them from K to S or whatever. Very, very different in the life cycle of a company.
Yeah, for sure.
So, David, if you can recall going back a bit now, we're jumping in the time machine. What was, when you've kind of got going in digital business and all of that, what did you find the most challenging thing to get going and overcome?
At the start, it really is just the persistence when you're getting something off the ground where you don't necessarily see an immediate return for your effort. Like getting a business off the ground can take years sometimes if you don't know what you're doing and you're figuring it out as you get going. And even once you do know what you're doing and you pick up pace, there's still a tremendous amount of work that has to go in until it really starts to pay off. So it's that persistence and sticking with it and having the confidence and the resolve. That's why I take my hat off to business owners. Like you've got to be a little bit of, a special type of crazy to stick with it and break through to the other side. And business owners, they oftentimes do a lot of it on their own. Like they don't have that many people that they can share some of these struggles with. So it's that persistence on your own that I find most challenging. But on the flip side, it's also the most rewarding when you break through.
Yep. Can you share a few success stories from students or clients who've used your systemology approach?
Yeah. So one of the ones that I love talking about is Jeanette Farron from Diggy Doggy Daycare. It's a doggy daycare centre, and she was working in that business for 9 years with her sister before she decided she wanted to exit. And then she worked with us over a couple of years to really remove herself from the day-to-day operations, and she became a real prime acquisition target. And she was ultimately bought by Petstock, which is a big listed Australian company, and they bought her business saying, we see this as a franchise prototype. We want to roll your store out and sit it underneath all of our Petstock stores all around Australia. And she got an excellent multiple. So that's, at one end of the extreme. I mean, there's other stories. I remember working with Gary McMahon from Eco Solutions, and he does like bushfire management in regional Victoria. And he hadn't had a holiday for 5 years. And we worked with him over the course of about 9 months, and him and a couple of his staff, and then he ended up taking his first holiday. And I loved when I interviewed him afterwards, after he came back from the holiday. He said, "Dave, I think Systemology saved my marriage." So I thought that was pretty cool. And then, yeah, there's things like Dave Porter from Portavac. They clean roofing gutters. And for him, like the biggest win there was, I think for this to really change, the change has to happen in the business owner, as in, you don't just put systems and processes and get them documented and you're done and everything runs smoothly. What needs to happen is the business owner needs to lead this. And for Dave Porter, he said normally when something would go wrong, he would yell at the staff. And he had this one breakthrough moment for him when at the end of the day, someone returned one of the trucks and it wasn't filled up with petrol and it was dirty and some of the equipment was missing. And normally he would just start yelling at the staff, saying, "You can't do this. It's got to be ready for tomorrow." And he said something in him just kind of spoke up and said, "No, don't do that. Fix the system." And he ended up creating a little checklist that he put on like a little clipboard that stuck on the cork board where everybody puts the keys. And he basically said, you have to run through the 10-point checklist before you can put the keys back on the cork board. And that got everybody filling up the truck, keeping it clean. And it was that breakthrough moment that really was, when I hear that, I know that's the rock dropping into the lake, and the ripple effect now will flow from that. But it was that first moment of impact that, really changes a business.
Sure. And I think two interesting things just to pick up on from what you talked about. My own view of a business or an organization is that the culture of the company reflects the founder, the owner's values, their philosophy, even their physical tempo, how quickly or slowly they do things, just kind of affects and in a way dictates the whole organization. And I think what I love about what you're talking about there is a topic I'm very, very interested in, and probably will do a course and maybe a book on it as well, which is about how habits define so much of our success or failure. Your word is systems and processes. I go with habits. And the thing about the checklist,
I love it.
the checklist for the bushfire thing is it's creating that habit. It's an organizational habit. And I think about habits not just for individuals, but actually for companies, for cities, for countries, and even the whole world. We're in all these kind of habits. Some are positive, many are not. And it's really interesting to come at it, from both sides. Something just to go back.
I love that.
Yeah.
When you write that, definitely send it my way, because it speaks to me at a deep level, because I often see systems and processes, as in the documentation, as just making habits visible. And all we're really doing is we're trying to get team members to follow a particular process, and we're going from, unconscious incompetence, then they go for, conscious competence, where they think about it and they follow the process to the point, ultimately we want to get to unconscious or subconscious rather, competence, where they don't have to think about it, which is really just a habit. Like, you follow a process enough and then it becomes a habit. So I definitely feel like we speak the same language, and I'm no doubt you love Atomic Habits by James Clear as much as I do. And a big part of that building evidence and changing the culture in a business, we talk about, well, you want to make systems easy and you want to make them obvious and you want to make sure that they're satisfying. And we try and tick those boxes enough until the thing becomes the habit of the organization. And it's a habit when the team says, this is how we do things here. And that's when you've really had that change.
Yep, exactly. And I think just to go back to an earlier point you raised, David, do you think an unsystematized business is harder to sell than a well-systematized business?
Most definitely. And that's one of those leading questions where you kind of already know the answer. It's great. You kind of set it up where it makes it so obvious for someone listening to this right now. And I think of Jeanette Farron, Diggy Doggy Daycare, the way that she sold. The two things that the potential acquirer cited was financial performance and the systems. And if you think about it, Systems reduce the risk for the acquirer. The person buying a business thinks, what are the risks here for me? The risk is the business owner and the key team members leave, and then the business stops performing and functioning to the same level it is when they bought it. And a system and a process is a way of reducing that risk, that key person dependency and key person risk, because you're capturing what needs to be done, which makes it trainable, which makes it transferable, which therefore makes the business worth a lot more because you're reducing my risk. Therefore, I'm happy to pay more for it.
Yeah. And even a successful small business can still be a chaotic mess that is pretty unappealing for someone to buy it. Even though it seems strong and has good cash flow or whatever, it might still be utter chaos there. It's the default thing, I think. So, David, a couple of last questions to fire at you. You've been in the hot seat for a while now. I can see the sweat coming up a little bit. I'm joking, of course. So the theme of our video talks like this is about change seeking, because we're big on innovation and driving change and impact and all of that. So for you personally, what is a change seeker? How would you define that?
A change seeker is, I mean, if I just look at the words, it's someone who is seeking to change something, as in, and therefore I see business owners as change seekers, because oftentimes they see a problem out there in the world that they think they can help to solve, or something that's been poorly addressed, and then they go about solving that problem. So maybe change seekers are business owners, or at least they are for me.
David, I love how articulate you are. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you today or tonight, where you are. Thank you again, David. Have a good evening there.